My name's Gary Marshall, and I run the animation company Super Umami. And a piece of advice I was given by a chap in Scotland who runs the biggest independent advertising agency. And I took him a showreel to show him, and he looked at it at the time and went, well, that's all very well, Gary. It's very good stuff, but I can get any of that anywhere. You're perfectly good, but I can pick up the phone and I can get somebody in London to do the same kind of thing. I've got to go away and do something I haven't seen before. If you show me something I haven't seen before, then I can hire you. But otherwise, I'm just going to phone the mill and get them to do it. And so that's what I went off and did. So it was good advice, and it made a lot of sense, because essentially what he was saying was the animation industry, the CG animation industry is really big, and if you try and do proper CG or like really slick stuff, you're immediately competing with the Mill and Blur and all the massive mega studios, because that's what the internet, the reality is that's what it's like now. As soon as you do that sort of stuff, you're just competing with them. Whereas if you do something different than an individual, then you're not. You're standing out from the crowd and saying, this is what I can do, this is something slightly different. And that's really the only way to compete if you're not a big studio. So,
after leaving university, I'd suppose I found I would say it's quite hard to find studio work. Freelance work, because it's not so intense, was a wee bit easier. I was just lucky enough that they found me, and not the other way around. I think searching for work, it can be fairly hard, and you need a really good portfolio. I don't think I was prepared at all.
I wouldn't say I was unprepared, I just didn't know what to expect, but when I started working in the industry, I was just flung into the deep end with modelling. I don't care if you can't model, ask a guy next to you, and that's the way we started. So I was unprepared to a certain degree, but the necessity being the mother of invention, I soon learned.
They're not perfectly well prepared for working in the industry. A few reasons for that. Probably when we get through fourth year, there's maybe about 10% of the students in fourth year that I would say I have confidence that that student could go out here and go and get a job in industry and do really well at it, because they've got the abilities, they've demonstrated them, certainly through their third and fourth years. I've spoken to other course leaders who have said the same thing to me. They've said between 20 and 10%, 10 and 20% of their students in fourth year or in their honours year are ready for employment in industry. The rest of them aren't, and they aren't because they've not put the same amount of work in as the students who are. And because a lot of students who come through the degree realise towards the end of it that it isn't really for them. The work is tedious and very time consuming, it takes up a huge amount of your time if you're going to do it well. And if you're not prepared to put in that time, then you won't get a job in it straight away, because very few people are that able to do it if they're not willing to put in a lot of effort.
If you were to specialise from university, I think then you could really advance within the industry. I think because at the time where I came out, you were getting more of a generalist area of 3D. It was like you knew almost every aspect of 3D, but only to, such a quality. It wasn't, anywhere higher up. Now if you specialise, you have the opportunity to really be specific in what area you want to work in.
You should specialise, you should find an aspect of animation you really enjoy, especially for project work. It's better to have just a few seconds of really high quality animation than to have 5 minutes of mediocre animation. 5 minutes of mediocre animation will get you nowhere. A few seconds, 10 seconds even, of really good quality work could get you a job.
I made a little 30-second thing. There was a tiny bit of Japanese pop music I really liked, just a little bit. I thought, I really want to make something for that. And one Christmas or whatever, I just spent 6 weeks just working on this thing. So I discovered a new way of doing kind of cartoon shading. And that one little short got me work on a regular basis for 2 or 3 years after that.
Funnily enough, an old friend of mine, I met him at college in the early 90s, and I encouraged him to get work in 2000 AD magazine. And he always says, without me telling or pushing him onwards, he would never have the confidence to go for it. So years later, he repaid us by getting me, when he got work in the 3D industry, he looked me up and he said, I'll bring you on board. And that was, I scratched his back, he scratched mine, kind of thing.
There were a few occasions I did try to get into industry, just a couple of occasions. Once was actually into Axis Animation, and when I tried to get into Axis, they had a general junior position, And I thought, absolutely fantastic, and I'd shown them a couple of bits and pieces that I'd done, and they were great up to a point, up to the point till they found out that I did everything in Lightwave, and they had changed to Maya. And once they heard that, once they had asked me that and I answered them, that was the last I heard from them.
I love Lightwave. I think if I were to do commercial work, I'd probably use Lightwave because I know it best still. We're going through a transition period as we switch software, so I'm learning Maya, and there's a lot of things I really like about it. I think that it does really well. But I think for sheer simplicity and speed of doing things at the minute, I'm a Lightwave user, definitely.
Right now, people say Maya versus Lightwave. To me, it's kind of like Mac versus PC. It's a subjective argument in that I know there is Axis and Glasgow Animation both still use Lightwave, but they also use Maya. They've got a lot of different things in the toolbox, and I think it's a bit of a misconception to say no one uses a certain program. I'm just going to totally train this because it's trendy. It doesn't. Reality doesn't work like that. At the end of the day, it's good to learn them all.
We're currently using Maya for the animation and RenderMan for rendering. That's worked really well. RenderMan's fantastic. It's a Pixar software, and they've created quite a user-friendly package that is quite expensive. So we make quite a lot of use of that. But we also do some 2D stuff using Flash and for compositing, mostly After Effects, some Shake if it's color-sensitive stuff, and that's really it. We also use Modo for modelling, which seems to be gaining quite a lot of favour in the industry.
Okay, advice to graduates as soon as you leave would probably be very understanding of the area that you want to go into. So by the time you've left here, you really just scrape the basics. 2 years of animation in 3D is basically the basics. If you're getting a wee bit more than that, fantastic.
Yeah, just develop a showreel that concentrates on your strengths. Do whatever you enjoy doing most. Spend your time doing that. People will do spaceships, but your lecturers or whoever will tell you, don't do spaceships. Everybody does spaceships. But if doing spaceships is what you really enjoy and you're really good at it, then you should do it, because if you get really good at it, someone will give you a job doing it.
The best advice would be to know what area you want to go into if you want to go into a studio. Do you want to be a modeler? Do you want to do texturing? Do you want to be an animator? If you have to take on a wee bit of part-time work, fantastic, but learn the important things. Learn if you want to do modelling or texturing, and then go really specifically into that.
It's a lot easier for us to gauge whether or not somebody's good, because we might see a similar type of thing from several candidates on different showreels, and then we can easily go, well, that one's the best out of those 4 or 5, so we kind of know what they're going to do when they come in. And students, I think that's the biggest problem for students is coming out and suddenly being kind of exposed to the reality of what actually goes on in production. But unfortunately, animation is an industry, not really, well, it's really a craft, not really an art form, or it's an applied art form. When you're in the middle of production and you're working for a big studio, it's hard to know where the art is in any of it, frankly. You're just dealing with production issues and creative problem solving, which isn't really that different to what people do in any industry.
What animated character would I want to be? Probably Red Guy from Cow and Chicken.
Is Tintin an animation character? He is. He's been animated. Yeah, Tintin. I love Tintin. I'd love to be Tintin.
That'd definitely be Tank from Surf's Up. He likes his trophies.
Jessica Rabbit. Sorry, just to make it clear, I was asked what animated character would I be. I'd be Jessica Rabbit, because I always fancied wearing Roger.
When I give in, oh,